If I remember correctly, you were working with like high net worth individual or something before. What kind of process do you still go through to continuously acquire or fill that pipeline with potential new contracts?
Well, I work with a lot of the association managers that manage these large communities, and you have to do a great job. There can be very few mistakes. There's very small room for error, in my opinion, because you really have to gain their trust. If you're good at what you do, it can really pay off because you have customers that are, sticking around for many years.
He once worked with Billionaires, hiring their butlers and chefs. Now he runs a poop scooping business, closing $3,000 HOA contracts. But how did networking with people help his business grow? Let's find out.
Welcome back to the Built Local podcast. Today, I'm really excited to present Mike Wright from Florida from the Poop Bandits, another poop scooper. He's got an interesting angle to his business, so I was excited to have him on. Mike, how are you doing today?
Good. How are you, Clay?
I'm doing great. Thanks for making the time. For anyone who doesn't know who Poop Bandits is or who Mike Wright is, tell them a little bit about yourself and how you got into the poop scooping industry.
Sure, absolutely. Well, I'm glad to be with you today, Clay. Again, I appreciate the invite. So we've been in business since 2017. Really kind of got started super small. I started the company for my oldest son, who is now in his mid-20s, as a way to kind of make some extra money. He was having a hard time finding a job. So I was like, well, let's create one. So that's kind of how it was. Really started over a taco dinner with my wife one night in the middle of the week, and threw it together really quickly. Probably the fastest branding and fastest company launch I've ever done. I think it took me 24 hours and we were up and running.
Yeah. Wow.
I really didn't get started in the business until COVID. When COVID hit, my son went to the Marine Corps, and we had a whole whopping like 8 to 10 customers in the beginning of 2020. And once he went to the Marines, I kind of struggled with, am I really going to be a poop picker upper? I really couldn't decide what I wanted to do. I was having an identity crisis. Long story short, it took me about a whole summer to decide to go all in on it. And I got my first big HOA account in September of 2020 after about a month or so of actually trying to do some marketing and trying to grow it, and was off to the races ever since then. And 2021 was just a crazy year. That was really my first full-time year, and just, had some fast growth. So it was fun.
Awesome. That's great. And one thing that was interesting about you was, if I remember correctly, you were working with like high net worth individual or something
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
Tell
I
us
mean,
about that.
I really viewed myself and was really, I guess I could view myself however I want, right? But I was a consultant for Billionaires. So most of my clients that I worked for, I would do staffing for their homes.
Mm.
So predominantly, I would work for Billionaires, people that could afford to have household staff like butlers, private chefs, personal assistants, nannies, that sort of things. Do executive recruiting for those families, and go find the estate managers or butlers that were going to work for them for a couple $100,000 a year in their homes privately. So it was definitely a suit and tie endeavor, and was not walking around picking up poop in people's backyards. So it was definitely different.
Yeah, for sure. And you already touched on it. Your business is so interesting. I think a lot of people look to you and look up to you in the commercial contract space, working with HOAs and associations and apartment complexes and stuff like that in the poop scooping industry. Because most people get into it and they're like, all right, I got to go find residential homes, right? And so do you think that your background with those high net worth individuals helps you with that sales process of getting into the HOAs and stuff, or did really nothing translate?
I think it all translates. I think everybody has a fall into it story, right? I think we all have different fall into it stories, but I think that my skills in being so heavily people based definitely played into the commercial side of it. This is a great industry for people that don't want to deal with people every day. I have residential customers that have been customers for over 5 years. I've never spoke to them. I've only texted or emailed with them,
Yeah.
because the service has been great. There hasn't been any issues, that sort of thing, right? We can only get so lucky with so many of those clients. But I think that the people skills part of it definitely helps for the commercial side, because when you're dealing with managers that manage these associations and these huge communities, or like you said, apartment complexes, sometimes you really have to have people skills, and you have to be able to build relationships. And, this industry, like I said, it's a great industry for somebody that's more of an introvert, that maybe is a little bit more shy, because it's
Mm.
not real people heavy, right? It's more dog heavy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for me, it did definitely translate, because talking with these managers, talking with these clients is just kind of second nature for me. It actually doesn't really use that much of my skill sets that I've built over a 20-year career in a different industry. So it's actually translated to be very easy for me. And I have a sales background that, spans many years. And it's kind of second nature for me, to deal with people and build relationships. I also ran an industry trade association for those domestic staff members for about a decade. So I'm very familiar with navigating through professional organizations, different industry trade associations and that. So for me, it's very easy for me to kind of speak the language of a manager, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. No, that's great stuff. I think people's original kind of impression on going to the HOA and the association, getting those commercial contracts is like, well, how the heck am I going to sell them? Right. They understand the fact that hey, I get a lead, I follow up, they pay me $20 a week and I scoop their poop. Right? So how did you get your first contract?
It's funny. I just told this story yesterday. I was talking with a member of Poop Scoop Millionaire that reached out to me because he saw the William podcast about commercial work. And, he asked me that same question. And it really is kind of a relationship, who do you know kind of story. So I had my daughter did dance growing up. She was a competitive dancer. And we had a family friend that just got into real estate a few months prior to me kind of going all in with Poop Bandit and deciding to do it. And I was asking her, I said, hey, can we have a coffee? I'd like to talk to you about, this poop business I have. Of course, gets a laugh, right? And what are you talking about? And I was like, well, I have this, poop picker upper business. Didn't even know how to explain it at the time. You're going to be selling a lot of homes and there's a lot of people in Central Florida, very transient. People move into the area, people move out of the area. So I'm like, at a minimum, let's sit down and have coffee. Maybe you can refer me to some people you're selling homes to that have dogs or vice versa, people moving into the area. And that's kind of where it went. So I met with her at her real estate office. I met with another realtor that was a friend of hers. We had a good laugh about the Poop Bandit as I was explaining it. And she said, I live in a community, and I know the community she lives in. She said, this is the community I live in, and we have like tons of trash cans, tons of pet stations throughout the whole community. I'm not sure who's taking care of it, but I know that they're probably not happy with it because it's overflowing all the time. The cans are overflowing and they're missing bags, that sort of thing. And she referred me she said she knew the HOA president. So she referred me to the HOA president literally the next day. And I jumped on a phone call with him and I said, well, let's meet in person. I think meeting in person is always a bonus if you can do it.
Yeah.
I met with that president of the HOA literally like that same week. He's like, well, give me a quote, give me an agreement to look at. Had no idea what I was doing. I have business background, so it's not that hard to, throw together an agreement, right? So it's not that big deal. So I threw this together and it was over $3,000 a month. I sent him the agreement, the day of, essentially after I met with him. And he sent it over to me via email and it was signed. And I was like, oh, now what am I going to do? Right. So, and that HOA is over $3,000 a month. It's 65 trash cans and 30 pet stations. We're in there multiple days a week. And it is still my biggest HOA. Even though I have multiple ones that are over $3,000, it's still my largest HOA is the first one I snagged. I was all in after that because I was like, oh, I can pay my mortgage now, right? A pretty fun story, but it was the referral, through a person I knew, friend of a friend. And the HOA business is really more of a referral-based business, in my opinion. You're not going to throw out $3,000 worth of Facebook ads and a bunch of managers are going to reach out to you or a bunch of HOA board members are going to reach out. We want to spend thousands of dollars with you to, do our trash and all of our pet stations in our communities. Yeah. But the Central Florida communities are pretty, a lot of them are massive. Where I live, they're pretty large.
That's awesome. And I think like people will hear that story and be like, I don't know anybody, or I'm not well connected, or this job isn't going to be, this contract isn't going to be handed to me on a silver platter. And I think the takeaway from it is that it wasn't handed to you on a silver platter. You knew one person who connected you to another. You made the outreach, you followed up the day of with the quote, and it happened. And so like, somebody, everybody's got contacts in their phone. Yep. Every single person has contacts in your phone. So start asking friends of friends, make one connection to another and make it happen.
And, I went from it of a standpoint, Ellie's her name. I owe her a life debt, the realtor that helped me get started with HOAs. I was also starting to run into a lot of people at the time because I was starting to do networking. Even though it was COVID, I still was able to get out there somehow and meet people. And, my thought is, how can I help her? How can I help Kelly sell houses? How can I refer clients to her? She's also my personal realtor, so she's, at some point, if I sell my house, she'll be my realtor. Of course, I owe her.
Yeah.
So she'll definitely be my realtor for life, but she's a great person. And a lot of it, life is who do you know? And especially with the HOA stuff, getting HOAs, securing these communities, you're going to have to get out there and meet people, and it doesn't necessarily benefit the introvert, but if you expose yourself to danger enough times, something good is going to come out of it.
And these contracts are a form of leverage. Like if you really are an introvert and you really hate talking to people, well, you're going to still have to talk to people, but you can talk to, 6 people to get one contract and serve, and get a $3,000 a month, contract. And that's what I mean. We hop on calls with people all the time who have been working for the last year to get to $3,000 a month. And so getting that in a day, they're like, that's mind boggling to them. And so if you don't know people yet, then just put the work in, join the chamber, go to the networking groups, ask around and put the work in. Because when you're doing it that way, sure, you might pick up some residential homes and stuff like that. But if you're going after the big dogs, taking the time to sit on 10 or 15 different network meetings or to find one is still well worth it, because it's been years now and you've had that
Yeah, I've had them. I haven't lost them, knock on wood, and I know what it's like to lose a $3,000 a month HOA. It sucks. It
Yeah.
really sucks because I'm very HOA heavy. We have residential part of our business, of course, just like everybody else. But I've kind of focused on that HOA piece. It's painful when you lose a $3,000 a month account, or a $2,000 a month account. I've lost plenty that are $1,000 a month. But if you're not growing at the rate of 20, 30, 40 residential customers a month, it might not be that big of a deal to lose a big account like that if you are getting 30 residential a month. I'm not.
Yeah.
It doesn't work like that for me. So when I lose a big HOA, I kind of freak out a little bit, right? So I'll keep it PG for the podcast. Yeah, I definitely hit the oh shit button for sure.
Yeah.
Try to figure out, okay, well, what have I been working on that I'm waiting in the pipeline to come on board, right? But we still grow the residential side with the emergence of Poop Scoop Millionaire. I joined that pretty quickly. I think I was like number 20 or something to join the group, and I was fired up about William and Levi and getting all the residential accounts that they're having success with. So I was like, well, I think I need to start advertising again. And I pretty much built my company with almost no advertising. I stopped advertising in November of 2021, and I didn't start advertising again, doing paid advertising, any form of paid advertising, until January of this year. So
Wow.
I was really kind of in hibernation for a while with
Yeah.
advertising. And then William and Levi kind of pulled me out of my slumber and woke me up a bit. Still learning the whole digital side, but we're getting there.
Yeah, for sure. And so you got that first contract and you think you said it, you're like, you're hooked. You're like, it's game time. And so if you got that one, what was the process there? Like, all right, I made this work. Now I need to figure out how to get a bunch more of these. What kind of process do you still go through to continuously acquire or, fill that pipeline with potential new contracts?
Well, I work with a lot of the association managers that manage these large communities, and you have to do a great job. You have to go over the top with customer service and really do what you say you're going to do. There can be very few mistakes. There's very small room for error, in my opinion, because you really have to gain their trust. What's nice about working for these managers is they move around a lot. Say, well, that might not be so nice, right? Because I have this big, let's use a $3,000 account as an example. I've been through 6 managers there. Usually that's a kiss of death for a service provider. Management changes are not good because typically a new board comes in or a new manager comes in, and what do they want to do? They want to tweak the budget. They want to see where they can save money. So usually a lot of people will get let go out of these agreements, unless if you're offering amazing service, if you can't be denied and they can't get rid of you because you've made yourself too important. Anyone's replaceable, though. It doesn't matter, right? If they bid you out, someone's going to give them a lower price. It's going to happen. But you have to make sure that that lower price isn't going to remove you from the service circle, right?
Yeah.
So you really have to stay committed to going over the top. There is no such thing as the answer no. It can't exist. You have to say yes. So what happens is these managers move on. They either quit or get let go of the positions of the management companies they're with. And if you're really good at what you do, they're going to remember you because they're going to have you on speed dial in their phone, and they're going to go work for another management company. So I've actually been pretty lucky. I don't have digital marketing expertise. I would never say I do. If I would ever say I have expertise in anything, it's relationship and referral marketing. I've built loyalty and relationships with these managers, which isn't the easiest thing to do because they're really busy. So when they go to another management company and they have new HOAs or communities, they find out who's doing the pet stations in here, who's doing the trash cans. I need to get Mike in here. I need to get his team in here. Most of the time, it's the landscapers that are doing these pet stations and trash cans. They're really not equipped to do them. They don't want to do them.
Yeah.
So it's not too hard to wrangle them away from landscapers as long as those landscapers don't think that losing that portion of their service is going to jeopardize their contract.
Yeah, for
I
sure.
think that answers your question. I
No.
hope.
Yeah, no, no, for sure. And I would say like, okay, so you have these connections. Turnover in for the managers is normally an awful thing for these service companies, but you've created such great relationships to where it's almost become a decent thing because like you're doing a good enough job there to stay there, and then also they're going to go somewhere else, and you're getting another customer. But how did you originally create the relationships with those managers? Was it networking events? Was it just texting people in your contacts? How did you kind of get your foot in the door with all those managers?
So it was really good old fashioned dropping off donuts, talking to them, getting to know them, doing a lot of listening, a lot of listening. I think anybody that's going to be good at doing any kind of referral relationship marketing, if you are a talker and you can't shut up and listen, you're not going to do very well. I'm a talker. So I'm like a pull cord. Once I get excited, I'm like a doll with a pull cord. You pull the string, it's never going to stop.
Yeah.
That's why I told you, the beginning of our call before we got on, I'm like, hey, stop me if I start rambling because I get excited and I start talking, and that's not good if you're trying to build a relationship with these managers and with people you want to work for. Any customer, to be honest, you want to do less talking than they do, so that you can learn how they tick, see what's important to them, and then try to find common ground with them and build a relationship. So you really have to do a lot of listening. So back to your original question of, okay, well, what did you do to build this? At the beginning, I didn't know about any industry trade organizations. There is an organization for community managers. It's called the CAI, not to be
Yeah.
confused with the CIA.
Yeah.
So it's the Community Associations Institute, and it's where all the managers really, kind of go to this organization for professional development, for certifications in their industry. Every industry typically will have a professional trade organization or association attached to it. Pooper Scoopers have one, multiples, right?
Yeah.
And APAWS, and then now we have Poop Scoop Millionaire as well. But every, doctors have them, nurses have them, podiatrists have them, everything niche that you can think of. In my case, domestic staff had them. I created that association
Yeah.
for them. I was first to market for that back in 2007, I think. So I did that for 10 years. It was great. But so I kind of have a built-in, mechanism that knows how to network with managers. And it's really like any customer client relationship. It's finding out what their pain is. And
Mm.
it's a simple sales solution of, what is their problem? Here's the solution. I've spent, 5 years plus now kind of figuring out what these managers are looking for, what their pain is, and then solving it. Even though I have managers move around, those managers will move to new HOAs, like I said, and they will bring me in. Well, what happens is, with these communities that do get turned around, if somebody gets let go or a manager finds a new job, that is, the new manager that comes in, what happens to me now is I already know the manager that's incoming.
Yeah.
They're like, "Oh, Mike, hey, welcome home. Good to
Yeah.
see you again," right? So now it's like I've got this huge mousetrap of relationships built to
Yeah.
where, like, when I have anxiety about managers leaving a community that I managed, I might even have a better relationship with the manager that's incoming.
Yeah.
Now it's a different dichotomy, which we have a lot of competition now as well. A lot more with the emergence of Poop Scoop Millionaire and these other groups that exist.
Mm.
We have a lot more competition now, but they can't erase the 5 to 8 year relationship I built with a manager just because they're new people. So and same thing with franchises. Orlando's the land of franchises. We have a lot of franchises that come in. They kind of undercut everybody's normal pricing in this area for about 2 years or so. Then they realize they're not making any money, and the franchisee usually gets frustrated and quits and leaves the franchise, and then they're kind of left to start over, which is my favorite thing to do. I love doing that to franchises. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm a little competitive too, as you could probably
Yeah.
tell.
Hey, heck yeah. I mean, that's what I think.
Nothing wrong with franchises, nothing wrong with them, but
Nothing wrong with being competitive though. I mean, I think
yeah,
I like our
I'm a
business because it is competitive.
small family-owned business. My adult children, I have 3 of them. 2 of them work for the company still, so I'm pretty territorial and competitive. So if somebody's gonna come in and beat me down, they're gonna have to pack a lunch, probably a
Yeah.
couple.
I love it. I love it. And for anybody listening, I think one of my biggest takeaways from that was that it didn't happen overnight. Like you didn't just develop a relationship with hundreds of community managers just overnight. Talking about getting your foot in the door, like talking about old fashioned delivering donuts. I mean, something like just delivering donuts with a card and just trying to create a conversation with these people once a week can go miles when you're just getting started. It costs you $15 for a dozen of donuts, right? But you can go do 5 or 10 of those in the morning, and something's going to pick up eventually. It might take 3 months, it might take 6 months, it might take 2 years, right?
Yeah.
But when you're dealing with these bigger contracts, a lot of times it makes sense. And so one other thing I wanted to touch on was when you're putting together these contracts for these associations, are y'all doing, because I think somebody's probably tactically like, well, are you just picking up poop out of the station? What does it look like? So do y'all pick up poop out of the pet waste station, or does it depend on the contract, or what do y'all normally do for these associations?
Well, it's funny because this has come up a few times before. So we really focus on emptying the pet station trash bins and along with any community trash cans that they have. We are going to clean up in about a 10 or 15-foot circle. If there's any poop that residents didn't pick up, we'll pick it up. We're not just going to walk past it and just empty the bin, right? So we will pick up, but we're not going to go, you know,
Scour.
poop in every green area in the community, right? We're gonna, if it's a complaint and it's an issue and it's a one-off and a manager asks me, hey, can you scoop this area? I typically will say no, and I'll explain why to the manager, and I'll explain, on the podcast here for our purposes here. But the issue is as soon as residents, this is just my opinion. There's plenty of people, I'll give you that as a caveat. This is just my opinion. And I just use simple logic for it. There's plenty of scoopers that will go scoop dog parks, go scoop large common areas and apartment complexes. I don't have one apartment complex, by the way, as a client. So I
Mm.
don't.
Yeah, yeah,
Not by design. I'd work for them without a problem.
yeah.
Most of the time, apartment complexes use maintenance people that already are on staff instead of a company like ours. That's just my experience,
Gotcha.
but some people
Yeah.
do work for large apartment complexes. My issue with scooping common areas is as soon as a resident sees someone else in a uniform scooping dog poop in a common area and there's pet stations all over, they are never going to pick up that dog poop again because they're like, oh, my HOA dues or my apartment dues for pet fees goes to that guy picking up the dog poop.
Mm,
So I don't have to put it in a pet station anymore.
mm,
So it completely defeats the purpose of how we run our HOA programs, number one. Number two, it defeats the purpose of these communities that spent a lot of money and time and maintenance into buying pet stations or trash cans. So they don't, I try to explain it to the managers that if you pay me to scoop these common areas, number one, it's going to be a lot more expensive. It's going to cost a lot more because it's going to take way more time. We want to train the residents and as much as we can leverage them to doing the right thing and picking up that dog poop themselves and putting it in the bin where it goes, right? So, but a lot of scoopers will argue with me that, hey, I'd rather make $900 scooping, a dog field than, emptying the pet stations. Nothing wrong with that. It's just not how we do things. And I just use that simple logic, and the managers like that too, because what it does at the end of the day is it defeats your purpose, like I said, of having the pet stations, but it actually creates an even worse problem. It creates a lot more dog poop everywhere because no
yeah,
one's picking it up.
yeah,
No
yeah,
one's picking it up anymore. And if 3 people don't pick it up, 6 people don't pick it up, and then the next person number 10, let's say, goes out there to actually pick it up and put it in a pet station, all they're going to see is poop everywhere and go, why in the hell am I picking this up?
yeah,
And they're not going to do it.
yeah,
So it's just kind of human nature, simple logic that I use to kind of talk people out of scooping those areas. But we'll do it if they want to spend the money. But by the
yeah,
budget is everything. So by the time I show them the budget of this is what we can do to avoid having to scoop it, as opposed to this is the budget for us picking it all up, it's kind of a no-brainer, to be honest, because it's so much less to have us do our program rather than scoop it.
yeah. No, for sure. That makes, makes a ton of sense to me. And as somebody who's graduated college a couple years ago, been living in apartments, and now just bought a home with an HOA, it's like the most consistent thing I see across these emails that people send out is pick up the poop. People know they're supposed to, and so if they see people showing up picking up poop, and other people quit picking up poop, it's just going to be a rabbit hole, and it's going to end up costing them much more money. So in my mind, logically, that makes sense to me as well.
And there's, once you're in an HOA, and I'm sure you've enjoyed being part of the HOA community Facebook, very exhilarating, right? Lots of positive things on there, right? All negative stuff. And, literally the number one thing people complain about is landscaping. That's the number one pain point. That's the number one pain point of managers as well. And then the number two pain point is dog poop. Oddly enough, number two for number two, but that's the number one complaint on Facebook, and that's the number two complaint on Facebook rather, and the number two complaint for these managers too. So it just kind of coincides with each other. It's weird how it works like that.
Yeah, for sure. And one thing I wanted to touch on was somebody listening to this who's saying that, well, this wouldn't work in my area. Do you think that that going the commercial contract route makes sense in most places or most cities, or do you think it needs to be somewhere like a Central Florida or a specific place where you do have a lot of those associations?
Well, I think you hit on a great point. I'm originally from Michigan. So there are HOAs in Michigan. HOAs, being part of the CAI and some of the research that I've done and just the experience over the years, HOAs are not going away. They're taking the entire country by storm. I don't remember the data off the top of my head. I mean, I can make it up and throw it out, but
Yeah,
70% of communities are now HOAs. It's probably more like 90%. I don't really remember what the data is. It's in here somewhere, but it's a large percentage. Being from Michigan, you're dealing with the winter climate, all the northern states. So it is a bit different than what we deal with here in Florida, in my opinion. I think we're, for what I do with HOAs, in the right place at the right time. Central Florida is going through a growth explosion, like a lot of places in Florida. And the only communities being built pretty much throughout the nation at this point are HOA based. And that's in every state, in my opinion. But
yeah,
Florida, it's 100%. Everything's
yeah,
an HOA.
for sure.
So I think that, will it work everywhere? No, I don't think it will. I think it works better in the southern states or states with good weather that have that sunny weather all the time. Arizona, I'm sure, has tons of HOAs. Texas, we know, does. So I think that it won't necessarily work everywhere. Do I think it can? Yeah, I do think it can work everywhere, though, for the right person. Getting residential accounts sometimes comes more naturally and is easier for some companies. And that's fine to build the residential side more than being focused on the HOA side. It just so happens I'm surrounded by HOAs. I live in one and I'm surrounded by a ton of them, and they're all huge. They're just
Yeah,
monsters for the most
yeah,
part. We have plenty
yeah,
of small HOAs, but where I live in particular, we're surrounded by some really large ones. So I do think it can work everywhere, if it's the right person, but they're not necessarily going to be these huge HOAs. Like up in Canada, they don't have resort style pools with, miles of dog walking trails for people with pet stations and trash cans everywhere, right? They're going to be more like it's a little community. It doesn't have a pool, it doesn't have a clubhouse, but it's got 2 or 3 pet stations, or it might have a gazebo with a park with a trash can. That's going to probably be more the example in a northern state. With us in Florida, it's, I mean, my clubhouse that I live in, my main clubhouse, I think they got 10 or 12 trash cans just on the pool deck.
wow,
So,
yeah,
I mean, that's pretty massive compared to something up north that, might have a few units throughout the whole neighborhood. We're just talking
yeah,
about the pool deck, not even
yeah.
around the clubhouse.
Yeah, yeah. Jeez. Okay. And so I wanted to touch on some pros and cons for people listening who might just be starting. I wanted you, since you've done both sides, residential and the commercial, I wanted you to kind of hit on a pros and cons list, just kind of quick hitters on both sides. So first, let's do, since we're already on topic, let's talk about pros and cons of commercial contracts.
Man, that's good. I haven't really put together a list like this, so we'll see what happens. Pros for HOAs. I think that's pretty easy. Number one, the ticket items are bigger. Monthly average for accounts is larger. I think my average, if I was going to spread it over all of our HOAs, I think it's like $600 a month or so
Okay.
as our average.
Yeah.
So that's a huge pro, right? Income is a huge pro, sales for that. Scheduling, I think, is the second biggest pro.
Mm,
If you're scooping somebody's backyard and you tell them you're in the schedule on Tuesdays, you better be there on Tuesday. They're going
mm,
to be waiting. They're going to be calling you. They're going to be emailing you if you don't show up, right? You might even get emails and phone calls if your guy normally shows up in the morning and they're not showing up till 3 p.m. one day, right? You're probably going to have a customer reach out to you.
yeah.
HOAs, these managers, we tell them what their days are that we're going to service when we start. Sometimes they get changed around, and as long as nothing gets overflowed and no service is skipping a beat at all, they're not going to be super concerned if it's done on Tuesday instead of Monday, if their service day is Monday, that sort of thing. So scheduling is a huge thing. So that also plays into another pro. In residential, if a technician calls in or they're sick or you lose somebody, you're having a hard time with hiring, you're going to be working a lot as an owner operator, right? You're going to
Mm,
work a lot anyways, right? We're all in
yeah.
business. We're all going to work. But it is a bit different with HOAs. If you have HOA routes, which we're fortunate enough to have HOA routes and residential routes, so I can kind of keep things separate in a lot of ways. So if something happens on an emergency and someone can't make it in on a Monday, it's not the end of the world if we don't get somebody to do stuff until Monday evening or Tuesday morning first thing for that Monday account. So it's scheduling is the second biggest pro in my opinion. And then if you do like, I'll use this as pros. I do like working with people. If you like working with people, working in HOA is a total pro, because you get to interact with a lot of different people. It's not going to be mundane and boring and the same thing every single day as far as trying to grow that side of it.
Yeah.
So I think those are, three big pros. I'm sure there's probably a bunch more that I'm missing. Buying pet dispenser bags every month, I would say, is a con. We probably buy about $4,000 a month in pet dispenser bags. So it's a pretty massive amount. You really have to have a warehouse, I think, to do HOAs properly because, after you get past a few of them, you're going to run into issues of where we're going to put all this trash and all this poop. So
Yeah.
that would be kind of a con as well. There's plenty of ways to figure out how to throw away dog poop without getting in trouble. But, if you are collecting large amounts of dog poop and large amounts of trash, you're going to have to figure out where to put it. And if you're, on the larger size of HOAs, you're not going to partner with a dog daycare facility or a veterinary clinic and say, hey, how about I pay you $100 and you let me destroy your dumpster every week? Right? That's not going to work. So we have our own dumpster. It's an 8-yard dumpster, which is the largest you can get. That's not a flat rollout dumpster. And it gets empty every day, every single day. It gets emptied Monday through Friday. So we go through. So that could be a con, right? Because that's a cost. We spend $800 to $1,000 a month on our dumpster fees.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's that could be a con too, because it's not a low entry fee. As far as that goes. When I got started, before I had a warehouse and our own facility, I used to have to go to the dump directly or our transfer stations. So that's a con too, is where you're going to put all this stuff, that can be a con as well. And you're going to have to get your truck washed every single day, picking up that much stuff too. So it's not going to be go scoop 20 yards. My truck really doesn't smell bad. We'll get it washed tomorrow. So that's another thing too. You got to be a little bit more sanitary, clean stuff more often. And so I think, that's one of the cons, and it's a slower build that I think can be a con too. I'm easier picking out cons than pros, it sounds like, but it can be a slower build, like you said. It might be 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 2 years with your example. That's absolutely true. But, if you're good at what you do, it can really pay off because you have customers that are, sticking around for many years and they're large averages.
Yeah. So would you say that churn is better for the commercial side where it's kind of harder in, but a little bit harder out as well because it is multi levels of management where you're talking to people? Or do you think that it's just as bad as residential for churn?
For me, it's way better. The churn is a million times better for commercial. I lose 4 accounts a year. That's my average. I only lose 4 accounts a year and I gain probably about 20 accounts a year, something like that.
Wow.
Some years is more, some years it's less, but
Yeah.
it's usually always around 20. Could I gain more than that? Absolutely. I could gain more than that. But yeah, it's only about 4 a year, but sometimes if those 4 aren't a couple $100 or $300 or $400 a month and you lose a whopper that's 3,000, it stings a lot worse than losing 5 residential customers a month. Let's put it that way. I think the churn is way better for commercial, but it depends. Central Florida, a lot of people move in and out of the area. So I'll be honest with you, most of my churn for residential is all people moving out of state or out of my service area. We don't lose customers to bad service or stuff that's outside of our, anything that we lose for residential typically is going to be things that are outside of our control, which is going to be people moving out of the area or somebody comes in and does it for, $10 a week or less than that to scoop a yard. I'm not going to compete on price with that. So if somebody wants to leave our service to go experience that, nothing I can do about that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. Well, I think a lot of those can be inverse to kind of give the pros and cons for residential. But if you want to touch on a couple pros and cons for residential real quick, or there's some things that we love about residential.
Yeah, I mean, pros for residential are, if you do have churn or you lose a customer, it's going to be on average $100 a month, right? It's not going to hurt that bad. You still want to analyze what you did wrong if you lose somebody over a bad reason or bad service, of course. But a pro is that you're not going to have to deal with people that often. Like I said, I've got plenty of, I've got like my original 10 or 12 OG, our OG residential clients. I've got them all still for the most part. A few of them moved out of state, of course, but I've got most of them, and then I've got a lot of clients that I've never spoke to. I've never had text messages or even emails with. They signed up on the website through Sweep and Go, put in their zip code, sign up for service. I emailed them their welcome email, and your tech's going to be here on this day. And bada bing, bada boom, it's done. And then, 4 years later, a lot of these people I still have never met.
Yeah.
I've never talked to, which is very not people oriented, right?
Yeah.
Unless if there's a problem, of course, right? So that's a huge pro.
Yeah.
If you don't have to have a high touch customer
Shitty
service
process.
situation with residential and getting them. If you're going to spend money on advertising and you have Google ads and Facebook ads figured out and you've built an awesome net to catch everybody, it can be easy to get them because it's more of a shorter learning curve and how much money you want to spend.
Yeah.
You spend more money, you get more customers. It's a pretty
Yeah.
simple math problem, I think. From that standpoint, that's a pro too, that you can gain them fast. You're not going to gain 30, 40, 50 HOA clients in 1 month, but you
Yeah.
can with residential. So,
Yeah.
I mean, but I think there's a lot of security in residential though too, because of the churn too. If you're capturing massive numbers of residential customers per month, that's a huge pro because they're very locked in. I think everybody's got a different formula, I'm sure, that they figure out for how long their clients, last for, what the lifetime of them is. But it's a
Yeah.
good number. It's a good
Yeah.
number for sure. Scheduling,
Yeah.
if someone calls in, show must go on, you're putting your clothes on, you're putting on your poop outfit, you're going out there, you're going to make it happen.
Yeah.
Because the last thing you want to do is move people around. If if you don't have to, you don't want to move anybody around. So scheduling is definitely a con. You could say the lower average for each account, for residential accounts is lower, but there's nothing wrong with that $100 average. It's a great average. So I think you don't always have to, have accounts that are multiple thousands, but plus expectations are a lot lower.
Mhm.
Make all the dog poop disappear.
Yeah.
That's the expectation, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Expectations in commercial, a little bit more nuanced, but at the end of the day, we're mainly emptying trash cans and refilling them with bags. It's not rocket science, but
Yeah.
and do it bad though. You can't do everything bad, even the simple stuff. So you still have to find the right people, follow systems, and do things the right way.
Yeah. Yeah. No, for sure. Well, this was absolutely great. I think this will be very beneficial to people. Trying to figure out whether they should go the commercial route or stick with the residential or whatever they're planning on. Before we go, Mike was interesting because when we onboarded Mike at Review Harvest, he was like, "Hey, I'm mainly commercial," but we still got him set up. So, do you remember how many reviews you had before you got started with Review Harvest?
I want to say I had like 30 something. I think
Okay.
I was in the middle 30s, maybe less than that. And right now I'm approaching 100. I think I'm stuck at 98 right now.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing is, I think I doubled my review number. I think I got like 35 reviews in like 3 weeks or something with
Yeah.
you guys,
It was
something like
fast. It
that,
was
right?
fast.
It was
Yeah.
fast. And then, I don't grow residential a lot during each month. I don't have 30 new customers signing up. I think we're averaging 8 to 10 right now of
Yeah.
new residential signups per month. So, and the association managers, they don't really have a lot of time. So to get them to leave a review, it's really kind of pulling teeth. You really have to kind of beg for it. I think that it's definitely been a nice addition getting on board with you guys and Review Harvest, and I appreciate all the systems that you've created because it definitely works. If anybody's, going to watch this and they're like, "Oh, I don't know." No, like sign up with the Review Harvest, double your reviews. That's my professional opinion to do it.
Yeah.
And right now we're the most reviewed pooper scooper in Orange County. There's only one other one in Central Florida that has more reviews than we do, which I should be leveraging that a lot more in my marketing, which I'm
Yeah.
working on it. I'm going to start doing that this next month. I'm going to talk to my marketing team, be like, "Hey, we really have to get past 100 so
Yeah.
that we have the most reviews, and we're over 100 5-star reviews for our market."
Heck
So
yeah.
it's awesome.
Heck yeah, y'all are very close. It'll come soon. And so thanks so much for your time. I think this was very
Absolutely.
valuable for people. And yeah, if people comment your questions down below the video, below the podcast or whatever. And if y'all got enough questions, we can have Mike on again if he's open to it and we can
Yeah, absolutely.
ask y'all's questions.
If somebody wants to reach out to me, I have no problem helping people. I will be a little bit partial. If you're in my backyard, probably won't be super open to help you be my competitor.
Yeah.
But, if you're out of my area, more than happy to help. I just talked with a new scooper in Southwest Florida yesterday, actually. And he had a bunch of HOA questions because he saw another podcast I did, and
Yeah.
more than happy to help him. So
Love it. Love it. Well, thanks for hopping on, Mike. You have a great rest of your day.
thanks, you too. Thanks, Clay.